BPI Sports has always been a massive supporter of natural bodybuilding, so it only made sense for us and them to partner up. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by BPI Sports, and if you want to support them and us, use code Natty News Daily at checkout for some exclusive discounts off any of your orders. Enjoy the episode.
Alrighty, welcome to the Natty News podcast. Today I've got a couple guests with me, just myself. Leroy and James might jump on in a little bit, but I'm here with Jeff Cook and Marianne Cook. How are you guys doing?
Doing good, thank you.
Doing well. So we were chatting a good bit about, details of the sport, turnouts at shows, all that fun stuff, which we can get into. But why don't you guys introduce yourselves to people who might not know you to start off?
Ladies first.
Okay, cool. So I'm Marianne, and I've been competing since 2012. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2012 in figure, and I got my pro figure card in 2014. So we just had a really big season end at the end of 2021. So we're going into an extended off season right now, and we compete together. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's something I want to get into.
Children. Yeah. But we have a 7-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son, which is napping right now. So.
Okay, we'll see how
I won't yell.
It's okay.
One of us may end up popping in and out as we do this, if they need help with something. But yeah.
So Marianne, did you started off competing in figure then? You didn't do like any? You've been figure all the way through.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. I mean, when I started competing, it was pretty much just bikini figure and bodybuilding. It didn't have physique. It didn't have wellness or anything like that. So, I feel like I just jumped in head first. I didn't know too much about it, but I knew my personality didn't fit in bikini. Mm-hmm. And being new, I knew I also didn't really fit in bodybuilding. But I really, really liked the look of figure. It was feminine. It was,
muscular.
Yeah. So that's where I've always fit in. Even when I was like smaller, I still like had the frame for it. So that's what I've been training for ever since.
You've done very well. You've won at least one pro show, right?
Few. Have I?
I don't know. You've won your class multiple times.
Yeah. So the Pine Tree, the OCB Pine Tree State was my first pro win in 2019. This past year, no, I didn't. I didn't win any pro shows this year. I won 2 of my shows in the NPC this year. But second. 1/3.
Hey, you're right on the brink. You competed at some big shows though this year.
We did all championship shows this year, right? Yeah. It's a lot to keep track of.
Yeah.
Busy year.
Yeah.
So you competed at the USBF show.
Yeah.
Mr. America, obviously that was first. Mr. America USBF. Then then you did IP Worlds, right?
Yeah.
So both of you did all 3 of those shows, right?
Yeah. So my season started a little bit earlier. I guess I didn't give any background. I started competing back in like 2015, 2016, and bodybuilding, and I've been in bodybuilding the whole time. Anybody who's ever seen me compete, especially early on, it would be a waste for me to go anywhere else because of my legs. I mean, I just have pretty overpowering legs, and I'm starting to bring some balance up. But since I started, it was always, hey, your legs are great, your upper body's too small. And so like I've worked over the last 5 years to try to bring that up. And this season was the first season where I got like, hey, your balance is really good. You just need to bring some density up in your back. And so midway through the season, I was doing some NPC stuff, and they do weight classes in bodybuilding. And I was like right on the cusp of making that weight. The lowest I saw this year was like 172 and some change. So middleweight cutoff is 176. So making that was relatively easy, but as the season got longer, my body started fighting back. All these carb ups that I was doing, I was settling in like 177. And so finally I was like, man, I'm not going to do anything drastic and cut a bunch of water and do a bunch of stupid stuff to try to make weight for an NPC show that's amateur. There's no money. There's nothing really for it. I'll just do classic physique. And I actually talked with several of the judges, and they were like, man, this is kind of where you belong in the NPC. Because of my structure and just my posing is a little more classic usually. And so that was kind of my first, I guess you could call it, step away from bodybuilding. But I think in natural federations because there's not a height and weight standard that go together. In the NPC, you have your height class, and then there's a certain weight that you have to be below,
max,
based on your height. Whereas in the natural federations, they divide you up by height. They're not worried about your weight, and they don't need to be for obvious reasons in a tested federation.
It's nice to not have to be really that worried about your weight,
right? Going into a
Mhm.
show Thursday night or Friday night at 7 p.m. to check in. I don't want to be trying to weigh the same thing I did that morning waking up. And so I did classic. And I did the USBF Show Me State Classic was the first one I did this season in September, right? It's like September 23rd or 3rd or 4th or something.
This was a couple weeks before Mr. America then.
Right. Right. And I had no intentions of doing it, but Brandon Wattis is a friend of mine.
Brandon's a good dude.
He put this post up and was like, "Hey, come take my money." And I was like, "What's this about?" And
sorry, I remember that.
They were doing guaranteed payouts. And so I messaged him and I was like, "Tell me about this show." And he's like, "It's a new thing. I'm trying to get some pros to do it. You should do it." And I was like, "Man."
And he was the only one registered. That's
right.
why
he was the only person registered. And I was like, "Man, I really would like to come and do it just as a warm up for the Mr. America." But I was also like, if your post ends up bringing in 10 pros, I don't want to waste my money and time flying out there, because I just wasn't willing to do anything off plan or dramatic to try to get ready early, knowing I had 5 more shows the rest of the season. Like I wasn't just going to all of a sudden, go into overdrive and risk screw myself up. So like 14 days out, I messaged him and was like, "Well, what's the feedback?" He was like, "There's like 4 or 5 of us now." And I was like, "Man, whatever, screw it. I'll do it. I look decent." And so I registered and went and did that show, ended up taking second to Brandon. And it was a good show. We had a lot of fun. And that was my first experience with the USBF. So
I've heard good things about the USBF. I've gotten good vibes from him. We actually interviewed Jack Halverson.
Yeah.
That was a while back, but
I'm sure he mentioned it, but like everything I heard about the USBF, unfortunately, it was just people thrashing them. I mean, just terrible.
Really?
And so I asked Brandon, he was like, "Well, they're under new management. Like there's been a complete reform of the entire federation." I was like, "Well, whatever. I'm not going to form an opinion based on what other people are telling me. I'll go find out for myself." And I went to that show and it was a great time. I mean, just everything was good about it. The promoter did a great job. The judging was relatively good. All the feedback I got. Obviously when you don't win, you're not going to agree with some things, but it was like one judge, when I asked, what could I have improved to beat Brandon, the response they gave me was like, "I really don't know." I was like, "What?" But I mean, it was a close battle with that one. But then we did the Mr. America, and then we did an NPC show. And then
IPE Worlds was after
IPE
that.
Worlds.
You had a fun time with IPE Worlds, I remember.
Oh man, yeah, that was
nuts.
Yeah. You want to talk about traveling? I mean, and I've always been the one that's like, nope, travel on Thursday just in case there's any chaos.
Yeah.
And like now we have a kid that's in school, and so you can't just pick up and leave when you want to. So we were like, we'll wait till Friday. We'll get her to school. We'll get on a plane and get there plenty of time. Our flight was supposed to take off at like 8 a.m. Come over the intercom like 30 minutes before, and we're like at the gate, and they're like, "Oh, it's gonna be like 2:30 before we can take off. There's a mechanical issue. Only mechanic's an hour and a half away, whatever." And we were like, "Not gonna work. We need another flight." Sent us to another flight, and then it was just rinse and repeat. Marianne's in tears at the airport all day long.
Well, what's funny is like it was the 2 of us and a buddy of ours, and they only had 2 seats on this other flight, and so our buddy was like, "I'm not competing. I'll sit here all day, wait for this mechanic to fix the plane, and you guys take the other plane."
He still beat us there.
Yeah, ours wound up getting delayed again. And
it's like 2 or 3 more delays.
We got there, it was after midnight.
Yeah, our plane didn't land in
it was just
Minnesota
after midnight
until after midnight, and we didn't get fully checked in and like asleep that night until like almost 2 or 3 a.m. We had to be up.
You sleep a few hours and then get your, I think you got your tan moved to the morning.
We still had to do our polygraph that morning. So it was
just felt beat up.
Yeah, it was rough. And I remember that day being like, I mean, I don't think it affected me too bad, but now that I have pictures from every competition, I've looked back and I'm like, oh man, you could definitely tell my body was not happy.
Yeah, the stress of that definitely would. Yeah. See, you see why, now you understand kind of firsthand why that the Thursday when
Right,
ideal
yeah,
is
yeah.
the best way to do it when when you don't have kids and responsibilities. So
yep. And that's another good point to that is we landed for the Mr. America. We flew to New Jersey, well, Philadelphia, and drove up.
Yeah.
That morning I was
Thursday.
172.8. We went up there. Friday morning I woke up and was 186, and I was like, move the scale around. This can't be
It was
right.
like 10 or 11 pounds, I
And
think.
everybody else was
Like that.
no, it was 14 pounds.
Was it 14?
Yeah. Everybody else was like checking out
I was
weight,
like still hitting new lows.
Yeah, and Eric Shelton was like, I got a new low. Man was like, I got a new low. I was like, I got a broken scale. I was like, something's not right. And so I called my posing coach and was like, hey, I want you to look at me. I'm not going to panic. I was like, I just want you to tell me if you can see anything. And he was like, no, you look, which I posed with Jose Raymond. He's a super cool guy. But like, if there's one thing he does, boy, he will gas you up. If you look any inkling of good, he tells you, like, he wants you to feel good on show day. So he's like, no, you look like a freak, man. You look great. And I'm like, well, at least I have somebody telling me that, because Marianne and Muhammad are like, oh, yeah. I'm like, okay. So I just decided not to change anything. And I increased my water intake that day, and I did like 20 minutes of cardio and woke up the next morning like 173 or 174 and was like, praise Jesus. So.
And that stress can look rough too.
Yeah.
It'll show up. So
I think the Mr. America was probably one of my best looks from a conditioning standpoint, but I was definitely a little bit fuller, and I intentionally tried to be fuller going into some of these NPC shows just because I knew there was going to be some big guys. And so I had to try to find a balance. But I think the USBF championships and the Mr. America were probably my two best looks for bodybuilding. And then Classic Physique, that show I did here in Greensboro, I had a really good look for that. So I think I did 7 shows last year, and Marianne did 6.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
it was a new record for me, and probably never going to do that again.
No, I think
you saw a lot though. You competed across a lot of organizations, and
traveling was a lot of fun, and meeting people, like that was awesome.
And that was
by the 3rd show, I was like, we gotta do the fucking tan again. Like I'm just so over this. I was done. So
that was part of the reason we wanted to do this. Is like, if you don't know, I've never competed anywhere outside the OCB before this year. And I just have been going back and forth with the leaders in the OCB about this rule, about where you can compete as a pro, where you can't, and we don't agree about it. And it's always been professional, but like, I know there's other places to go compete. And if I'm paying someone to compete, it's not like I'm being paid a salary, So like, I want to be able to compete where I want. At least there should be some sort of incentivization for an athlete, in my opinion. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to go compete in multiple federations and then tell everyone what the goods and bads are of those federations. And so we did that, and we made a very honest review. I didn't hold any punches for any show. Maybe Marianne held a couple because I made her, but it was very level-headed though. I mean, and it was like 2.5 hours in total between those videos of feedback for each organization and the shows. And so that's a good video if you're just a new athlete.
That's on your Team Cook Fitness Instagram, correct?
Yeah, it should be on our
So if anyone listening wants to find it, go check that out, because they did a review of a lot of different shows. So so they could kind of look into that. But I really want to talk to you guys about how you guys manage all the things that you have going on. You have kids, you have businesses, you got lots of responsibilities. Competing together too, both competing at the same time, so that's a lot. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about how you did that, and what was competing together like. I have lots of questions, so I'll just let you kind of go.
God first and foremost is how we do any of what we do.
Yes.
Especially without ripping each other's heads off. I mean, there's got to be a solid foundation there. But we get asked this a lot, actually.
Do you think it's easy, because you've probably had preps where you didn't prep together? Do you think it's easier prepping together or easy prepping separately?
I would pros 100% and cons say it's easier. It's especially easier for her together.
Yeah. And I had been competing when we met. So I was already doing the thing. It was a part of my life when we met. He had been into bodybuilding.
I was coaching before I was competing.
From other aspects, yeah.
Yeah.
But we were already together once you stepped on stage for the first time. So, which I was, I think it was, his very first show. He prepped by himself because our daughter had just been born.
Not when she says by myself, I had a coach, but I did it. She was not prepping with me in that show.
Right. I wasn't prepping with you. Callie was just born. So like I, understood it obviously.
I started.
So that was your only one.
Following the sport at a very young age. I was still in the Marine Corps. I was obsessed with it. I went to multiple, the huge NPC and IFBB shows because that's all I knew. I didn't even know natural bodybuilding existed. So I was like going to the Arnold Classics and things like that and following it. And then I started following guys like Cliff Wilson, and I found natural bodybuilding. I actually started coaching a couple friends that just asked. I didn't solicit myself as a coach. I just was running a fitness center at a gym, and people were like, hey, I want to do this show. And I'm like, well, what do you know? And it's like basically nothing. And I was like, well, I know a little bit, but I'm not a coach, but I'll help you. And like these guys actually just happened to look really good and started winning. And so I was like, well, eventually I'm going to compete, but like I'm not ready. I want to be big enough. I want to look good. I was still really young. I knew I was in a good age of growth. And then when I met Marianne, she was in prep for NPC.
That was the year I got my pro card.
And also the OCB no gear.
So you guys met when you were in prep, Marianne. So how deep into prep were you?
Well, that's when we started dating.
Yeah.
It was. I was very deep in prep.
It was a different type of relationship though, because it was almost like I was helping her. We worked together at that point, and so I don't say I was coaching her, but like I was writing her programming for her at that point, and like just being an accountability partner, because there was days like 5 a.m. where I knew she was supposed to be doing cardio. Like I would check the gym cameras and she would not be there yet. And I'd be like, hey, what are you doing? We need to go do cardio. And she'd be like, oh, I hate you. And I'd start meeting her to do cardio. And then that kind of evolved into a relationship. We started dating after that. And it was much easier because we were in that like infatuated with each other, make sure she likes me a lot, do everything perfect, and like try to impress each other phase. Whereas now it's like, I'm hungry, get away from me. Like now we can actually be honest with each other.
Yeah.
But
I think because we've done that separately in the past, like we kind of have that mutual respect and understanding, in what to expect. So now it's, obviously, we get irritable and we get hungry, and it's like, I need to walk out of the room for a minute.
Yeah, one of us might snap
and take a
off
breath,
at the other one,
and we understand that.
Yeah,
so it's fine.
So if it get, like it can go beyond, I need to walk out, and you just immediately say something spiteful because you're hungry, and the other one, we are usually cognizant enough to be like, you're in prep, and just walk out of the room. Like,
yeah, just kind of.
You're not. This is not a good time to have this conversation.
But you get it because you've both been there, so that's
correct.
Right.
It's very different than like we coach some athletes whose spouses just don't understand. They do, even after 4 seasons of competing, they just don't get it. They're supportive, but if you've never done it, as you probably know, especially after this last season, you really had to grind. You just don't know what somebody's going through at that dark place in prep. And so like,
once you get to a certain point, it's just like, you just want to be left alone all the time. Like you don't want anyone around you at all. Like,
exactly. You don't talk, you stop talking with your hands, like you're just sitting in conversation, and people are like, wow, you're so boring,
and then like people will tell a joke and you're just like, it's like, wait, and then you're thinking in your head, like, this is supposed to be funny, like this is messed up. Like I know in my mind that this is supposed to be funny, but like now we can see we're laughing, but
and I guess my pro debut in 2018 was the year that Aaron was born, and I was dieting while we had Aaron.
So you had hospital twice without me before.
I was in prep when Callie was right after Callie was born, and then while she was pregnant with Aaron. That was an interesting contest prep because she obviously was not. Like she was pregnant, she was eating good, but she was eating. If she wanted to go eat something, she would go eat it. And like,
I'm like, hey, when are you gonna be home?
Yeah,
I gotta clean up my Domino's.
There was a couple times where she's like, "What time are you coming home?" And I'm like, "I'll be home by 7. Make sure all the junk food is out of sight." Like, don't. And like, it was good because she understood. The hardest part.
Are you someone that needs to kind of have it out of sight, out of mind, sort of thing?
Not anymore. I used to be.
Okay.
This last season, when the kids were born, it was bad. I hated feeding Callie graham crackers and stuff while I was in prep. But I will say this, up until 2019, I prepped a very old school way, very restricted, the same foods, all prep, you know. And then in 2019, I started using my macros a little more and having some flexibility. And then this season, like, I didn't have any struggles at all until probably like after our second or third competition was where I was really having an issue, not an issue, but like struggling with like cravings. But I didn't have any, I mean, it was a 47-week prep, and like from January all the way to the Mr. America, not once was I like, oh, I just want to eat this, you know, because I could figure out how to make something close enough fit. So that was very different this year. But in years past, yeah, like put shit in the counters or in the cabinets and padlock them because I don't even want to know it exists. But this season was much better.
That's interesting. That's shifted based upon your methodology. Because I've found that, like, even though I tend to employ a little bit more of a flexible approach, especially off season, with my food choices, but like in prep, like my food choices don't vary much at all. And I think even like thinking, oh, I could fit a cookie here, but it's like, that's just not a good decision. Like, it's I just don't want to, because it's like, I want to eat more than that. Like, so it's like, you don't even think.
I think that's actually what helped was I got to the point where I was I didn't used to understand how macros work. I was just eating whatever the heck my coach told me. And then once I really learned, and then we made this shift in like 2017 or 2018, when we started coaching a lot more and teaching other people how to track their macros, I realized like I would much rather have, 200 grams of white rice than so many 2 or 3 cookies that take up those carbs, you know? And so this season, it was a lot easier for me to just be like, I don't even want that because I know it's not going to be satisfying when I can eat however many grams of sweet potatoes and I'll be full for hours because of the fiber in this meal. So I think the education of knowing what was in my foods made a huge difference over the last probably 3 or 4 years.
And this last prep was so long compared to other ones that it was really, I mean, it saved my sanity for a good majority of it. And it was really good for the kids too, because I had a lot more energy earlier on where we were still doing family stuff and going out and doing things for the kids. And even though we weren't, eating with them, it was still a lot more fun because our weight loss was so slow and manageable that we weren't like zombies from day one.
Able to keep my calories up pretty high.
Yeah.
I mean, I was over 2,300 calories almost all the way into the end of prep. I didn't come under, I don't think I ever got below 2,100 calories, which I know for some people that's low.
But the year
for
before,
the average person that I've met, I mean, like in my years past, I've had to come down to like 1,600 calories, which is just agonizing when you weigh 175.
Yeah, it's nice when you don't have to put the pedal to the metal at the end. It's just a more stressful environment too, because I mean, like as you get leaner, you keep being aggressive. It's like there's cost to it just across the board. Calories are low. You're already fighting as hard as you can to spare muscle, and stress is already high. It's just it definitely makes things challenging.
I did like a 50-mile backpacking trip the week after the Mr. America. And like I could in 4 days. And like I was really nervous that I was gonna just like be miserable. And like I had some issues with my feet, but other than that, like as far as hunger and everything goes, it was not anywhere near as bad as like I thought my energy levels would suffer, but they didn't. Not like I expected them to. I mean, I thought I was gonna be like a walking zombie, and felt pretty good.
So sounds like you felt generally pretty good throughout your prep. When I have a question though, whenever prep ended, did you kind of realize, wow, I'm hungrier than I realized?
It didn't take that long. It was actually right after that backpacking trip that I realized how bad. I actually ended up having like a binge. It was right after that backpacking trip because in my head I was like, well, I have 2 weeks before my next show, and I ate like, I don't know, it was like 7 Bojangles Supremes or something on the way home. little did I know I was going to be competing the next Saturday in Charlotte.
Yeah, that was a last minute show.
But I made it work, you know, I did well in that show. But I could have definitely afforded to not have eaten 7 Bojangles Supreme. It was at that point where I realized, like, holy cow, I've been dieting for a long time. My body didn't really start fighting me though until that IPU Worlds. That was where I realized after that show, I guess the stress from that flight and everything else piled up on me. That's when I was like, oh man, do I have it in me to go these last few weeks? So, but I have a good teammate, so we held it together.
That you do. And your relationship with your kids, you know, obviously as you get leaner and you're a little more irritable, do they notice things, or like, are there ways that you kind of strategies you have to implement to not snap on them? Or
we have totally different relationships in prep with the kids. So Callie fully understands it. This has been a part of Callie's life since she was born. You know, I was in prep when she was born. She's 7 now. She gets it. Did you weigh that? Are you tracking that? Dad, mom's eating something that she's not supposed to. Mom, dad's eating something that he's not. I mean, she gets it. Yeah. And she also understands, like, we're going to be more aggravated. And so we can say, like, Callie, I know you're tired of hearing this, but I'm in prep and I'm just short-tempered today. Can you help out?
And I mean, I think we did
she does.
I actually do think we did a better job this time.
Yeah, way better.
Because I don't know why. Maybe it's just because Aaron was a little bit older. So our son just turned 4. And in 2019, I mean, he was a baby.
Mm-hmm. You can communicate with them a little bit more.
Yeah, he could understand.
Yeah, and so we really didn't get to do too much for Callie's sake. Mainly, I think, because Aaron was so little. Mm-hmm. But this year, because they were both like kind of understanding and like a little bit older, like we went to a ton of movies, went to baseball games,
and like that was also
ice skating. You know, it was more fun, I think, this year for them.
That was a personal goal for me as part of this, because people all the time are like, oh, you guys really have it together to prep together and do this, and you know, you run these businesses. Like, it's cool for people to say that, but like in my mind, I'm like, man, there's times where I feel like we're falling apart. So like I made it a personal goal to be like, you know what, I am going to do stuff with the kids. We are going to go on vacations. Everything is going to be normal, as much as I can control. Right. And so like, I think making that a priority made it a lot easier, because there were several times where one of us would be frustrated and I'd be like, hey, you know what? This is just prep. Everybody chill out. And like within a couple minutes, it was rained back in. And so I think Aaron understands. Callie definitely understands. And they get it. And they also are okay with, if we go to a restaurant, there was times where I would take them out and like, I would just get coffee and they would eat and they have no issues with it. They don't care. Waitress will ask 10 times, are you sure you don't want anything to eat? And Callie will finally say, he can't eat. He's bodybuilding and he's in a diet. He's on a diet, or he's in a contest prep.
That's one of the most annoying things, is when someone's like persistent about it. Like, I don't mind if someone asks, but like if you ask me like 4 times, it's like, I'm already annoyed. Like, don't test me.
So to answer your question, the kids get it, and I think we've had a lot of practice over the last 4 or 5 years to kind of build that relationship with them, that they understand what's happening. They like to go to shows
and they enjoy it. Yeah.
I mean, Callie can take a notepad and score a show at this point, and like she does pretty well in line with the judges. I mean, she's easily within 90%.
Wow.
So it's impressive.
And do you find, just with having a lot of activities with the kids, that's actually something that kind of keeps you busy, that keeps you, you know, occupied? Whereas, you know, like if you're just sitting like alone in your thoughts and hungry, it's just terrible. But if you have something to do to quote unquote distract you, I've definitely found that helpful.
So a strategy I implemented, it doesn't involve the kids, but like when we work for ourselves, we own the gym and I train people one-on-one. But like if I had a 2-hour gap during the day where there wasn't going to be anybody at the gym, it was an agonizing 2 hours. And so like I'd already worked out, I didn't have any cardio, so like I would just go for a walk, or like walk on the treadmill at, you know, something that was just normal steps pace, not like trying to do extra cardio, just to distract myself. And like I would turn on a movie on my phone and just walk and listen, and like I wasn't trying to accomplish more calories, I was just trying to accomplish like staying focused so that I wasn't thinking about food or my next meal and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's definitely something that comes in handy. The podcasts and the videos and stuff like that when you're, walking or doing stuff like that definitely comes in handy quite a lot.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Yeah.
But is there anything else you guys kind of wanted to talk about today? Or I know I threw out some topics where, I know you've got a lot on your mind with, pros and cons of different organizations. And
I mean, there's nothing that I want to talk about. Not that I can think of. I mean, we talked about how we balance life with the kids. The way we balance life with the kids is honestly just a teamwork. I mean, we do a very good job complementing one another. Sometimes it's good cop, bad cop, and sometimes it's bad cop, bad cop. It just depends on,
depends on the situation.
Yeah.
I think we're just good at, when one of us gets overwhelmed, we're like, okay, dad's off the clock. Come to mom if you need something, or vice versa.
We do a good job of
when someone hits that limit,
picking up the slack when one of them,
and just
one of them
being
needs it.
Each other.
Yeah.
Like if you were a bodybuilding couple, or if you're not a bodybuilding couple and you're a spouse supporter or whatever, and you don't compete, but you're just watching this because your husband or wife is telling you to watch it specifically for this part, like the best thing you can do is recognize when someone's struggling and be like, hey, let me take over for a little bit. Like,
and for the person who's struggling, don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, just, hey, I'm at my wit's end. I really need you to step up.
Yeah.
Like there were a few times where it was like, hey, I'm at, this is it. I've reached my wall. And it's like, well, I've reached my wall too. So what are we going to do? And you just have to talk through it.
Have to communicate through it. Yeah. It sounds like, just in general, communication is key. Cause for me, I've only prepped as a single guy. So it's very different. So I'm always interested to hear how other people do it and how other people manage that. And it sounds like you guys kind of almost communicate without communicating sometimes between the two of you, because you just get it. But with kids, it's a little bit different. So
we have a pretty good system too. If people ask like, well, who cooks the food or who preps this and that, and it would change, but I think most of the time in prep
it needs to be done.
It's like most of the time in prep I was cooking the food up until the end of prep. I guess there was a schedule shift or something happened, and then it kind of became more 50-50, but like one of us would do it when it needed to be done. It really didn't matter. And like cleaning the house, just don't clean your house when you're in prep. Just let it be dirty, because you're gonna clean it and then it's gonna get dirty and you're gonna be pissed off at everyone. So just leave it. Just let it be cluttery.
Oh, I guess, because I'm thinking that cleaning house is a great activity to do to keep me distracted. But when you got other people living, living there, are gonna mess it up. Then you're just
right. You clean one room and you go into another and you come back and it's destroyed. You're like, what happened in here?
Even when you're not prepping, you get like mildly annoyed, and then it's just it becomes a full.
And with the business aspect, I think we just balance stuff out. Like she does a lot more of the admin logistics side. We have we have our coaching business, but then we also run a gym. It's like 6,200 square foot. It's a private facility. But we have anywhere from 7 to 10 trainers operating out of it at a given time through the year last year. And so like we just had to kind of delegate who was in charge of what, whether it was, the budget for that month or sending invoices to the trainers or paperwork or whatever. We sell supplements. We have a deal with Long Life meal prep company. And so it got to a point where like, if one of us feels like we're doing too much, we can just go to one another and say, hey, I need you to do this, or I need you to do that. I need you to be responsible for client check-ins this week because I have too much going on over here. And, just being able to pass things back and forth made a huge difference, I think, for the success of our contest prep.
And with juggling a lot of things, do you find just with prep, you became a little more efficient in the way you did things, or has that
absolutely?
Yeah.
I've never met anyone who hasn't come out of a prep and been like, wow, my life was so much more routine when I was in prep.
Yeah. You just, I mean, we have a very tight schedule. Like we share a Google Calendar, so we know each other's schedules and we have to like, plan around each other for some things. And life is totally more organized and we just thrive off of that. And we keep that year round, obviously.
I will say that was the hardest thing in prep was manage. In years past, we've managed each other's calendars. Not when I say manage, like we just keep up with each other. But then this year in prep, especially for me, I spend a lot more time at the gym than Marianne does because she's handling the kids and doing the real work, and so I would pull my phone out and it'd be like, oh, Callie has gymnastics. And I'd be like, what the hell? How am I supposed to make it to that one? I still have, I got to lift, I got to do cardio, I got to prep food for us, I got to see all my clients. So when you start adding kids' activities into the mix, that's definitely going to be the challenge of our next prep because they're both going to be at an age
where they're doing more activities. And
right. And so that's going to be the interesting, how are we going to make this work?
I kind of think next time I'll be prepping alone. I don't know. Well,
your coach keeps telling you you're not prepping when you want to compete, so you should just maybe listen to your coach. I'm a coach. She wants to compete sooner than I want her to compete again, but I'm not competing in the next 2 years. There's just no way. Probably not. I would really like to go 4 years if I could.
Have a nice long off season, grow a lot, and
yeah, I'm getting old, dude. I'm not gonna keep growing forever. I'm 33. I'm not gonna grow till I'm 50. I mean, I might, but
look at Jeff Alberts, man.
I know, that's what I was gonna say. You have these anomalies, and people all the time are like, oh, Marshall Johnson, and I'm like, yeah, that's Marshall Johnson. I also have a lot of injuries and stuff from the Marine Corps that I don't put out there publicly to people, and it really inhibits my ability to train the way that I want to train. And so I have to get really creative, and I think I'm going to need more time to grow muscle where I need to grow muscle because of the approach that I'm kind of forced to take. So
what years are you both targeting? Do you kind of have a general?
I mean, I really would like to compete late fall of 23.
Every time we talk about it, it gets closer and closer. We'll do this again next week, Dan, and she'll tell you late fall 2022.
No, definitely not this year. Oh my gosh, this is the first time I'm planning to have every single off season. I'm either pregnant or I'm getting injured or something. So far, if I can say injury free, this should potentially be a very, very strong year for me.
Get pregnant.
Yeah,
you have control over that.
There's a guarantee on that one.
So yeah, because even through COVID and stuff, leading up to last year's prep, I had some injuries that I mean, even when I started prep, I was I have lost size. I just don't think this is, I might not be okay to compete this year. And
from bodybuilding or from other things?
We really aren't sure.
I don't even know.
Just all of a sudden randomly had a broken foot. I say broken. It was like a fractured sesamoid bone in her foot. And so we had to do.
Well, that and my SI was really bothering me, which is probably because of the foot. I don't know. But the first 2 or 3 months of prep, I thought my legs have gotten really small. I don't know if I should do this. But as I started getting leaner, I was growing a lot in prep. Yeah, and I think a lot of it is because we made such small cuts that I was able to grow through the majority of prep.
Yeah, you weren't actually in a true deficit probably until early summer.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I would like to see her probably push through 2023 and then maybe do fall of 2024. That would be what I would like to see, but I don't.
Are you guys feeling both fully recovered 100% or close to it?
I feel incredible. I don't know about her, but
my lifts are really good. But I mean, some days I come home and I'm just so freaking lazy. I'm getting my lab work done next week, I think.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, we're 11
curious
weeks.
To see what those are. Yeah.
I'm gonna push out a little bit more. I'm gonna try to get 16 or 20 weeks to do my lab. I can tell you right now, I know that hormonally I'm back to where I need to be, just based on how I feel.
That's something you can feel. That's for sure. Yeah, I mean, as a male, I know that we talked about the labs, but I didn't think they were as low as they were, but I could tell they were low very clearly.
Yeah. So in 2018, and I don't think they'd be anywhere near these numbers now. I'm older, but in 2016, my natural total test was 1100, which is just astronomical. And my free test was above, I think the chart stopped at 24 and mine was a 26. They were actually concerned. And then as I got older, it kind of came down a little bit. 2018 or 2019, I did it again at the start of prep. It was 919 was my free test. And then I tested at the end of prep and it was 200. I was like just in the dumps. And then 16 weeks later, I was back up to like 750. So this time around, I'm going to wait a little while. My weight's back up. I'm averaging about 210, which is good for me in an off season. I pushed it a little far. I'm sure you saw my fat boy pictures in the last season.
I saw them. I mean,
there definitely have been worse. I mean,
I've seen a lot worse.
Did you see Alberto Nunez's post the other day where he posted?
Oh yeah.
I was like, that's what I want to do.
I think it looks worse whenever you're in prep too. You're like, wow, I look like shit then.
Well,
now you look at it now like, okay, I was a little heavy, but like really not that bad.
I took those pictures in my posing trunks, so like I was in my trunks that I wear at 175 at 222. Yeah, like you can hardly even see the material between my fat rolls, but I feel really good right now at 210. Like I said, I have some pretty permanent injuries to my low back that are never going to go away unless they develop some kind of new surgery that's just worth doing. But the VA has told me like, actually the last time I was there, my doctor said, oh, we just need to try to keep you comfortable. I was like, oh, great. We calling it hospice, But, no, I have degenerative disc and I essentially don't have any material between my vertebrae below like L4. So from there down, it's pretty much just gone. I was a machine gunner in the Marine Corps, so I was carrying heavy loads. I took a fall one time on the side of the mountain during a patrol, and that didn't help. So just little things adding up. Yeah. Right. But I've managed to work around them. They told me I shouldn't work out anymore when I first got out of the Marine Corps back in 2011. And like, it got to the point where I was like having trouble walking. And so then I was like, man, screw this. Started working out on my own. I went to school for exercise physiology and decided this is what I want to do. And basically taught myself how to rehab and got to where I was training hard again and felt good. And then decided to compete in 2016. So, but yeah, I battle around that stuff as best I can. But besides those injuries, I don't have nothing right now that I'm like, oh man, I'm still suffering from contest prep. Other than I can still eat 17,000 pounds of food without getting sick. But I don't think that's just a me thing.
Always a bottomless stomach. But yeah, it's interesting to hear that. I mean, both of you have managed quite a few injuries and still competing at a very high level. So I think a lot of people use injuries as a crutch. Well, I'm hurt, so I can't do this, and this. But
I mean, I could do that, but I tell people like, yeah, you have to be smart. And some people are like, oh, I just train around my injuries. And like, that's maybe the right term. But I just tell people like, I try to be proactive. Like I do physical therapy. I see a chiropractor. I see a massage therapist. I see another massage therapist. And I do acupuncture. And like, I do all those things intertwined with my bodybuilding. And it allows me to do the things I need to do. I'm never going to deadlift 450, 500 pounds again. I'm never going to squat under a bar. Like I can hack squat, I can rack pull, I can do bent rows within reason. There's a couple of times in prep where I got a little too excited and then paid for it for a few days, but
you find movements that you can do and you roll with them, that's definitely huge. So any closing thoughts here before we cap off the podcast? I'd love for you guys to plug your socials, all that fun stuff. Where can people find you, that sort of thing?
So we coach off of our Team Cook Fitness business. That's our Instagram where most people follow us. We have one for Independence Fitness, but if you're not local to like the Greensboro area in North Carolina, it's not going to be very beneficial to you. But if you are interested in working with us, we've got lots of stuff on our page about what we do. We have a YouTube channel, but
we haven't used it in a long time.
We're not active on it for obvious reasons with everything else we have going on. Like, I would love to, but I don't have the skill set that you guys, this is why you guys have a podcast, right? Like this is your wheelhouse. And we've done some good videos, picking a coach and off-season dieting and things like that we think are like big topics for new competitors that we want them to learn on our YouTube channel. But most of our content, if you call it that, it's pretty sporadic, but it's on our Instagram. That's how we operate our business.
Awesome. Yeah, these two are really great pros, so highly recommend giving them a follow. And hopefully maybe we'll get you on another time as well.
Yeah, cool, man. I'd love to be on for a spicy topic. You know me.
Yeah, we can talk about that kind of stuff all day.
I get down.
I'm down for that. I am. So awesome.
I want to wait until somebody really important gets fired up about it though, and come on with them and maybe debate it out a little.
So stay tuned.
We had so much in our recap video that I'm like, I don't really want to bring up a lot of the drama again, but it's certainly out there.
Yeah.
We have a lot of opinions, but I mean, a lot of the time we try and keep quiet about it. We've really kept quiet for a few years about some of what's going on, but because we don't want to draw the wrong kind of attention, and we have athletes compete all over the country, so we certainly don't want backlash to fall on them.
Yeah, I don't want to speak out, and then that's why I was quiet for so long, because I was like, no, I don't want somebody that's on a judging panel to watch a video, be pissed off at me, and see an athlete come on stage and say, oh, thanks to my coaches at Team Cook Fitness. And I know that they're not supposed to, just judges should never do this, but let's be real, like unconscious bias is a real thing, and I just don't want that to be because of me and fall on one of our athletes.
Yeah, no, I get that completely. But if there is a spicy topic you want to come on, though, we could talk about it. No doubt about that.
Reach out.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you for having us. We appreciate it.